They walked in, smiling. One of them even tipped me. I didn't know I was about to be part of a robbery that would change the county forever. It was a Tuesday, sometime in late October of '99. One of those dusty Midwest afternoons where the wind smells like old corn husks and burnt oil, and the gas station I worked at, Carl's Corner Stop, stood lonely on a stretch of Route 38, like a forgotten outpost. We didn't have cameras. Management said we didn't need them. Too expensive, Carl muttered once. Besides, who's gonna rob a place that barely sells $20 in scratchers a day? I was 23 at the time, just out of community college. I worked the evening shift from 4 p.m. to midnight, mostly for the free hot dogs and quiet. Nothing ever happened. And when something did, it was usually harmless. A drunk farmer looking for jerky, or a stranded trucker needing a phone. Then they showed up. Two men, one tall with shaggy dark hair and a goofy smile, the other shorter, wire-thin, wearing a jacket too big for him and mirrored sunglasses even though it was near dark. They didn't look like trouble. Just two guys grabbing road snacks. Tall guy even made a joke about the price of beef jerky. Something like, "This stuff cost more than gas," which was true back then. They bought Gatorades, cigarettes, 2 scratch-offs, nothing out of the ordinary. But it was the way the short one watched me while his friend chatted that caught my attention. Not rude, not threatening, just memorizing me. My movements, where my hands went, how I rang up change, where the register sat. I remember he said only one thing, and it wasn't to me. It was to his buddy right as they walked out. "It'll do." And that was it. They left, but the taller guy, just before he stepped out, dropped a dollar bill in the old plastic tip jar next to the register. "For your charming customer service," he said with a wink. I didn't even know we had a tip jar. That night, I closed up as usual. Nothing felt off, not yet. But at 2:12 a.m., 2 hours after closing, my phone rang. Not the store phone, my home phone. And nobody ever called me that late. When I picked up, there was just silence on the other end. Then a voice. "Keep quiet, and you won't be blamed." Click. The morning after that strange phone call, I got woken up by a banging on my door. It wasn't the cops. It was Carl, my boss, red in the face and sweating through his shirt like he'd run from the highway. "They hit us," he said, out of breath. "Store's trashed. Register's gone. You didn't see anything last night?" I blinked, still trying to shake off the sleep and the ringing echo of that voice from the call. "No," I lied. "Nothing." We drove back together in his truck, Carl cursing every few seconds, slapping the steering wheel like that would rewind the clock. When we pulled into the lot, I saw the glass had been smashed in. The place looked gutted, candy shelves knocked over. The register ripped straight out like someone had known exactly where it was bolted. No signs of struggle, no broken locks. Just a quick, clean sweep. Carl kept saying, "We don't even got cameras. Who does that?" But I already knew the answer. I just couldn't say it. The guy's words kept echoing in my head. "It'll do." And then that call. "Keep quiet, and you won't be blamed." It wasn't a threat. It was a deal. That's when I noticed something. Behind the counter, next to the spot where the register used to sit, the tip jar was still there. Empty, but still there. And taped underneath it, crooked like it had been slapped on in a rush, was a folded-up scratch-off ticket. One of the ones the tall guy bought. I picked it up. Carl didn't notice. He was on the phone with the sheriff by then. I unfolded the ticket, hands shaking like maybe this was going to be the part where I found a note, a warning, a message. But there was only one thing written on the back in black marker. This was never about the money. I stuffed the scratch-off ticket into my back pocket before Carl could see it. I didn't know why I kept it. Maybe part of me thought it was evidence. Maybe I just needed to hold on to something that made this all feel real. The cops showed up about 20 minutes later. Sheriff Leland and Deputy Ronnie, old school types. Leland chewed tobacco and barely looked at the scene. "No cameras?" he asked. Carl shook his head. "Nothing." The sheriff nodded like that was about what he expected. "Then it'll be a tough one." That was it. No dusting for prints, no measuring tire tracks. Ronnie took a couple of half-hearted notes, and then they were gone. It hit me then. Nobody was going to figure this out. Nobody was going to try. Carl locked up for the day and told me to take the rest of the week off, paid. He said it like a gift, like he was doing me a favor. But I knew better. He was spooked. Something about how clean it all went down, how they didn't take snacks or mess around. Just the register, just the money. And then gone, like ghosts or pros. I walked home. The whole way I kept looking over my shoulder like someone was watching. Not in that paranoid way, but like I knew someone had their eyes on me. I got back to my place, locked the door, sat on the couch, and pulled the ticket out again. It was still there. The words hadn't changed. This was never about the money. I flipped it over, stared at the scratched silver box. 3 matching symbols. Winner, $100. But it wasn't about the money. That's when I realized. They wanted me to find that ticket. They wanted me to know this was a message. But what message? That I'd been used? That I was part of something now? Or maybe it was a test, and if it was, I just failed it. That night, my phone rang again. Same time, 2:12 a.m. I picked up. No voice this time, just silence and breathing. Long, slow breathing. Then a click. The next day I tried to act normal. I went to the diner on Main, ordered my usual: black coffee, scrambled eggs, dry toast. The waitress, Denise, didn't say much, just raised an eyebrow when I walked in. "Heard what happened," she said, refilling my cup before I even asked. "Guess it's good you weren't there when it went down." I nodded, but I didn't correct her, because I had been there, just not when the register got pulled. I kept my head down and ate fast. That's when I noticed the guy in the corner booth. Worn leather jacket, sunglasses on inside, nursing the same coffee for 20 minutes. I wouldn't have thought anything of him, except he wasn't from around here. You can always tell. And when he finally got up, he left a 5 under his cup and a small folded napkin on my table on his way out. I waited until he was gone, unfolded it slowly. There was an address scribbled on it. No name, just tonight, 9 p.m. Come alone. It was a house up near the lake. I knew the area. It was mostly cabins, fishing shacks, places people only used during the summer. Nobody should have been up there in October. But I knew I was going, even before I'd finished my coffee. That evening, I drove my old rust-red Chevy up the narrow road that curled along the water. The sun was already dipping behind the pines when I saw the cabin. Rundown, porch light flickering, a black muscle car parked in the gravel. I parked a ways down the road and walked up on foot. Heart pounding, I knocked. Once. The door opened before I could knock again. It was the tall guy. From the gas station. He smiled like we were old friends. "Took you long enough," he said, stepping aside. "We've got some things to talk about." Inside, sitting at the kitchen table, was the other one, the quiet one with the glasses. He nodded to a chair across from him. "You passed," he said simply. "Now it's time to tell you why we really picked that place." I sat down slowly, eyes darting between the 2 men. The cabin smelled like old coffee, sawdust, and gasoline. The kind of mix that sticks in your clothes for days. The quiet one, who I now realized must be the brains of the pair, leaned forward with his elbows on the table. "You're probably wondering why you," he said, "and why Carl's corner stop." I didn't answer. I just stared at him, waiting. "You passed the test," he continued. "Didn't say anything. Didn't crack. You're calm under pressure, and more importantly, you listened." The tall one leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching me like I was a new hire on his first shift. "That place," the quiet one went on, "wasn't just about grabbing some cash. We wanted to know if you were the kind of person we could work with, the kind that keeps his mouth shut." I finally spoke. "What is this? Some kind of gang?" They both chuckled. "Not a gang," the quiet one said. "A network. A crew. You could say a business." "And what kind of business robs gas stations?" I shot back. He didn't flinch. "The kind that's planning something bigger. Something that needs people like you. People who aren't flashy. People who blend in." I looked at the tall one. "Why me?" "Because Carl hired you," he said, voice suddenly sharp. "And Carl owes us. He's been laundering cash for years through that register. When he stopped paying what he owed, we gave him a little nudge. The robbery? That was our way of collecting." "So this was never about me?" I asked. The quiet one smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Oh, it's about you now." He slid something across the table. A manila envelope. I opened it. Inside, photos of me, at work, at home, walking through the grocery store, sitting on my porch, all of them recent. One from just 2 days ago, me picking up the phone at 2:12 a.m. "You're already in it," the quiet one said. "And if you don't want Carl's debt, or your silence, to become a liability, you'll show up tomorrow night." "Where?" I asked. "Back at the gas station," he said. "One more job. After that, you can walk away, if you want." The tall one grinned. "Unless you like the pay." I left the cabin with the envelope tucked under my arm, the sound of gravel crunching under my boots, and the weight of a choice I hadn't asked to make pressing on my chest. The next day, I went back to the gas station like nothing had happened. Carl had reopened, patched the window with a sheet of plywood, and said the insurance company was dragging its feet. He barely looked me in the eye. I could tell he knew I knew more than I should, and he definitely knew why the register had been ripped out so clean. "You okay working tonight?" he asked, scratching the back of his neck. "You don't have to if you don't want to." "I'll do it," I said. And I meant it, because I didn't have a choice anymore. That evening, the station was quiet. Too quiet. I kept looking out of the window, waiting for them, the two men, but they didn't show, at least not right away. A few regulars came and went. Mrs. Dalton filled up her Buick. Some kid bought a slushie and a candy bar. Nothing strange. Until around 9:48 p.m., a black SUV pulled into the far end of the lot and parked facing away from the store. Windows tinted, engine running, nobody got out. I waited, watched, tried not to look like I was watching. At 10:03 p.m., the bell above the door rang. A man walked in. Not either of the two from the cabin. Someone else. Older. Gray hair, suit that didn't quite fit. He looked like someone's accountant, not someone mixed up in anything criminal. He walked straight to the counter, placed a brown leather briefcase on top, and said, "They told me you'd know what to do with this." I didn't move. "Who are you?" I asked. He didn't answer. Just smiled, thin and practiced, like someone who spent his life lying to people and never getting caught. "Tell them the delivery was made." That's all. Then he turned and walked out. I opened the briefcase, It was filled with cash. Not hundreds, 20s. Bundles of them, wrapped tight and stacked like bricks. I shut it fast and shoved it under the counter. My hands were shaking, but I tried to look normal, like I hadn't just been handed more money than I'd made in my life. 10 minutes later, the SUV pulled out and drove away. That's when the real twist came. At 11:26 p.m., just before closing, a sheriff's cruiser pulled into the lot. Not Leland's. This one I didn't recognize. Young guy. Buzz cut, new face. He walked in slowly, hands resting on his belt. "Evening," he said, nodding. "Everything quiet tonight?" "Pretty quiet," I said, trying to keep my voice even. He looked around the store, then leaned a little closer over the counter. "We've been watching this place," he said quietly. "Just so you know, you're not as alone as you think." Then he turned and walked out without another word. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat on my couch with the lights off, staring at the briefcase on my coffee table. $500,000, easy. All in 20s, untraceable. And now I knew I wasn't just part of some local debt collection job. This was a pipeline. Money moving in and out of that station like blood through a vein. And I was the newest artery. But that deputy's words haunted me more than the money did. "You're not as alone as you think?" That wasn't a warning. That was a message. Someone, maybe the sheriff's office, maybe feds, they were watching. But they hadn't stepped in, which meant I was being used by both sides. The next day I drove out to the cabin, but it was empty. No car, no lights. Inside, it looked abandoned, like it hadn't been touched in weeks. Dust on the floor, cobwebs in the corners. The manila envelope I'd left behind was gone. But in its place, sitting dead center on the kitchen table, was another scratch-off ticket, like the first one. Same brand, same silver square. I flipped it over. On the back in the same black marker, it said, "Don't get cute." That night at the station, the phone rang at 10:41 p.m. Not the store phone. My phone. When I picked up, the quiet one's voice was low and calm. "You made the drop. That's good. Now it's time for you to choose. You stay in, we keep you safe. We pay you. You run, we find you. You talk, they find you. You understand?" I didn't answer right away. My mouth was dry. My heart felt like a piston. "What if I don't want any part of it?" I finally asked. There was a pause. Then he said, "Then maybe you shouldn't have answered the phone the first night." Click. 5 minutes later, my doorbell rang. I froze, looked out the window. No car, no person, just a small box on the welcome mat. I opened it slowly. Inside was a burner phone, already turned on. No note, just a contact already programmed in. "Call when ready." I stood there, holding it, feeling the walls close in from every direction. And for the first time in days, I said something out loud. What the hell did I get myself into? I stared at the burner phone for what felt like hours. Eventually, I slid it into the drawer next to my bed and didn't touch it again. But that didn't stop the dreams. That night, I kept seeing the cash, seeing the faces of the two men, hearing the sheriff's deputy say, "You're not as alone as you think." I didn't know who to trust, or if there was even anyone left to trust. The next morning, I walked into the station like nothing had changed. Carl was there, pale and jumpy, chain-smoking behind the register like he was waiting for a bomb to go off. "You see anything weird last night?" he asked me. I just shook my head. "Just people pumping gas." He didn't press, probably didn't want to know. That night, I sat on my porch after closing, staring down the street. I was halfway through a beer when a different car pulled up. Not the SUV. A beat-up brown sedan. The same deputy from before stepped out. No uniform this time. Just jeans and a jacket. He didn't smile. "Mind if I sit?" he asked. I nodded, and he lowered himself into the creaky porch chair beside me. "We know you're in the middle of something," he said. "We've been tracking these guys for a while. You're just the latest link in a long chain of scared men trying to keep their heads down." I stayed quiet. "We want to bring them down," he continued, "but we need someone on the inside. Someone like you." I turned to him. "Why not arrest me?" He shrugged. "You didn't steal anything? You didn't launder anything. You're just a witness, a shaky one at that. But you could be a hell of a lot more, and if I say no?" I asked. He took a long breath. "Then stay quiet. Keep playing their game. Just know it doesn't end well." Never does. He left a card with a number on it. Told me not to use my own phone. "We'll be listening," he said before driving off into the night. That was 2 weeks ago. I still haven't made the call. The burner phone sits on my nightstand, silent. The briefcase is gone. They came for it 3 nights later. A different guy. This one with dead eyes and a voice like gravel. I handed it over without a word. Carl hasn't asked me to work since. But I still show up, every night. Like it's just a job. Like I'm not stuck between 2 machines grinding each other into powder. Last night, a new note was taped under the register. Just 3 words, printed clean. "One more run." So here I am, sitting under the flickering fluorescence, watching the door, waiting for whatever comes through next, and telling myself I'm just the gas station guy, nothing more. But I know better now. I was chosen, and whether I like it or not, I'm in. Thank you for spending this time with me. If you enjoyed the story, give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next one.